All right, I think we're live. Welcome, guys. I just want to thank Jason and Steyn, good friends of mine, ex-colleagues of mine, both with PwC, and both quite avid competition modelers as well. We are essentially the design team of the cases for the South African Excel Championship, and today we actually had our first round, our first qualifying round. We had two sessions, one at 5 and one at 7, and we had quite a number of people competing, and I'm very excited to actually see South Africans competing in the competition. That was the purpose of setting up the competition, is to bring it to South Africa with a local flavor and to introduce more people to the world of financial modeling. But this isn't really financial modeling. This is more problem solving in Excel, because there's not even one number, or let me put it, no one currency value in here. No one rand is in here. So it's definitely not a financial model. The case was designed by me. I am very excited for the Rugby World Cup that's coming in September, and can't wait for it to start. So in the meantime, I brought the World Cup to me so long. So developed this case around a new scoring mechanism, and the idea is that the French organizing committee reached out to you as an Excel modeler to test out a new score tracking methodology. So in other words, what happens is whenever the team scores a try and conversion, a penalty, or a drop goal, it is allocated by the symbol, or it's indicated by the symbol T, TC, P, and D, and then halftime is indicated by a pipe character or a pipe symbol. And the only place where the pipe was actually used, in essence, was sort of in bonus number 2, I believe. While I was developing this case, I actually thought about bringing in like changes in points difference between the first half and the second half. But the idea behind this is we didn't want to make it impossible. I still wanted people to be able to get full marks, and we did get a couple of participants that got full marks in the half an hour, which is excellent. Our friend Diarmid Early also participated live in the 5 p.m. session. It was 11 a.m. at his time in New York, and he got full marks as well, and he'll share his solution with you guys as well, so that you can see how an expert modeler actually does that. He finished the case in just under 19 minutes, which is wonderful. The case was actually allocated 30 minutes, and it was possible to do it in 30 minutes. Both Steyn and Jason, when they attempted my case, they did it under the 30 minutes, and pretty much got full marks for it as well. So the bonus questions we'll get back to, but the bonus questions just sort of helps with that extra. So we have typically in the main competition and the global competition, we typically have many guys that score full marks, but then the bonus questions come in where they compete head to head. The rules are, if you compete head to head on bonus questions, the person who got the right answer first gets the points, and the other person cannot get the points. So it becomes a sort of a strategy that you want to follow. Do you want to do the bonus questions first, get the points because it's quite a high scoring points, or do you want to get your easy marks first? Sometimes it actually makes sense because your first level actually scores 6 initially, but then later on you can score up to 12 points per question. So maybe you want to start at 5. Everyone has a different sort of strategy around that. But yeah, let's get into the case. The first question was, which team scored first? This was very easy. You could have solved this with your eyes. And we're looking at case A in this case, because case A was the first case, and we just sort of working through that one. So what happened there was you were just supposed to extract the first character essentially, because you wanted to see who scored first. So you could have just done a left of the first character, and let me just do that. So basically you could have just said left of that, and that would have given you the number. And then all you have to do from there is to use that. I just use an index, and I said, well, index for me these two, and the column that I want to index is this number. And that would give me the right answer, right? So that was sort of the first way that I did it. I did everything in one formula, and because of that, I had to feed the index a number, and I just used this little trick where you can use a double dash, and that converts it to you. It can convert it into a number for you as well. So that's a little nice tip for you if you want to convert something to a number. If you didn't have the double dash, it would send that left as a text because it's reading from a text, so it doesn't know to convert it to a number. And that was pretty much case number one. We had an automatic sort of Unicode sum kind of thing here that sort of just created a almost like a hashed number for the actual full answer. So you had to get all of them right to get this level total. And yeah, so in the first case you could have scored 60 points, and you would have answered the top 3 and then the final answer. So yeah, maybe Steyn, you want to take us through how you did level 2 and any tips that you might have, or maybe let me not jump too quickly. Did you guys do anything differently in level 1 that's worth mentioning, perhaps?
Renier, I did exactly the same thing as you. I did the left and then used the index. I did do it on the side as you demoed. I didn't do it in one cell. But I think the double negative there is a great tip. Yeah, so I think feeding the left function into the index, I think would have caused an error because it essentially returns text. But when you apply the result of the left function to the index after the fact, then I think it works. It can still work. So yeah, good tip there. Thanks. But I did exactly the same as you.
It looks like it works without the double negative for some reason, but I think when I did it didn't work without the double negative. But yeah, that's just a tip to make sure that you convert something to a number if you expect a number. Steyn, anything that you want to add there?
Yes, I used a switch function. So I'd used the left, and then the result, I applied the switch function. So if it was 1, I used the value for team 1, and if it was a 2, then I used the value for team 2.
Yeah, that's cool. So a switch function is like a case. I don't know if you want to share your screen and then show your level 2 as well afterwards. But yeah, a switch function is like a case in programming. So in essence, just maybe zoom in a little bit. Your screen is a bit small, but yeah, a switch is almost like an if function or like a nested if. But yeah, you can continue.
Yes. So I also used the left one, and then I had to change it to a number to get it in a number value, and then I use the switch. So if the value is 1, then use the value from this column. If the value is 2, then use the value from this column.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, the value function also does the conversion to number, and then I also think the n function, just the letter n, also does the conversion to a number. So there's some tips. And then also the left, you didn't actually. So actually, a left and a right function, you don't actually need the second parameter. So if you leave it out, it'll always take the first character. So it's just a small tip. Anyways, what did you do for question 2 or level 2?
Well, in question 2, you had to count the number of tries, and even a try with conversions also did try. So it basically boiled down to counting the number of T's in the string. So what I then did is I calculated the length of the string, and then I also I did a substitute where I replaced the letter T with nothing, and then I calculated the length of that string without the T's, and then I just deducted the 2 numbers, which gave me my number of tries, which I just put in a single formula.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that method because I told someone earlier that I actually forgot about that method, and when I heard it again, it's actually one of the fastest ways to do it in my book, right? Because what I did was I first did a text split to split up the whole thing, and then I went and did I did a sum, and then the sum is based on if the mid of the second character for one character is a T, then make it a 1, and otherwise make it a 0. So maybe let me just share what I did. So I over-engineered it. It was completely unnecessary, but I did a mid of the full sort of dynamic array that is split out from the text split. You didn't have to use text split. You could have used text to columns as well. Text split is just a nice new formula, or yeah, nice new formula. And then I said, well, give me the mid of the second character for one character. If that's a T, then make it a 1. If it's not a T, make it a 0, and give me the sum of all of that. And that gave me the answer. So I like your method better. I think simplicity wins when you're working under pressure. When you're building a proper model, that's a difficult switch you need to make. When you're building a proper model, you don't want to necessarily go for the most simplistic method potentially. Maybe if it's going to be audited, yes. But if you're doing this competition, the simplest way always wins. You can see I did a text split, and a text split can take multiple values. So I basically passed an array into it. But Jason, I saw that you actually did it more. You also used those characters, but you did it simpler. I guess, do you want to show us how you did it, and then also maybe show us your question 3 or your level 3?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Let me grab my screen here. Yeah, cool. So, Renier, I sort of you did the mid thing to pull out the character T. I went for the mid immediately, and so I used this formula over here to pull the mid of the input range. And a cool trick to know if you want to split out the individual characters in a text string is to use the mid function with one character at a time, but the character that you're choosing, you just put in a sequence of the length of the text string. So if the text string has got 50 characters and you do a sequence of 50, it's going to give you the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up to 50. And then if you feed that sequence into the mid function, essentially it's pulling, start at character 1 and give me the one character. Start at character 2, give me one character. Start at character 3, give me one character. And so it just splits it out into one long range with all the characters split out. And then I just counted up the T's and C's. And something that I'll just note that I did almost immediately when I started the question was when you define the symbols and the points, the try with the conversion was a TC, not just a C. And so I immediately went and just did a find and replace for TC and put C in, because I wasn't sure if having 2 characters for one of the lookups and not one character, because all the other symbols were just one character. I didn't know if that was going to be an issue for me at the time. And so, I just converted everything to C. C wasn't being used in any other place. So that's why I've got to look up for C specifically. But otherwise, if you didn't do that find and replace, then you would have had looking for TC, or I suppose just the T, because the T counts as the TC anyway in my example. So that would have been maybe slightly quicker.
Yeah, it would have made it more beneficial for you, but maybe the C helped you later on, because what we've seen in the past with these cases are, you're expecting now that every single sort of score event is only 2 characters, and now you've got one score event that's 3 characters, and it might throw you later on if you're building a large model or whatever. So yeah, that's a good tip. I've seen a lot of guys that solve some of these cases in like seconds because of find and replace. I remember we had a case, but it was probably about 2 years ago, where someone did it in 18 seconds. I think it might have been Dim or Bo that did it in 18 seconds by just doing a find and replace and then like a sum or a sum if or something. Because if you technically, what I said earlier today is, if you technically take the 1 being team 1 and the 2 being team 2, and you find and replace that to maybe an A and a B, then you could potentially take the P and the D and the T and the TC and the D and replace them with numbers, and you actually have the values. Then you don't have to look up the values later on. Then you would have your score there for let's say row number 50 would have been B3 and then B3 and then A 3. So maybe because you've converted it to numbers now, it makes it easier down the line. So the find and replace is a nice thing to have in your tool belt with some of these competitions, and it could be beneficial in the long run. But yeah, I like your example, because it's actually simplistic. It's actually splitting out the full thing into its separate characters, and then so the sequence is an amazing little function that's very nifty in this case. And then also and then it's just a COUNTIF from there. Essentially, it's as easy as that. Cool.
Yep, that's it. Okay, question 3.
Yeah, go for it.
So in question 3, we were asked then to tally up the total points that were scored in the match for both teams. And so I'd sort of followed a similar approach, question 1 or level 1 and level 2, where I'd used a formula that I'd sort of just copied down. But when I got to level 3, I broke away into a new tab and just built up a bit more of a sophisticated calculation, and then used a data table to output all the data. So I'm gonna flip across. We're basically still pulling up this scoring event input, and so I went across into a new tab. I just typed in example 3, and I used an XLOOKUP to just pull the column where those the characters were with the scoring mechanism, and looking up example 3 in column B, I think it was. And then I did the same for pulling the team name, the team 1 and team 2 names. So I think this is 21. So if we enter to example 21, then I'm pulling Georgia and Australia, which is essentially just these 3 cells over here. I'm just pulling them in. And this setup of doing a dynamic lookup on and pulling the information you need from a question is a sort of a fundamental setup to let you do data tables going forward, and that really speeds things up. For you, I'll just go back to example 3 here, just because it's got more sort of content in it in the scoring. Funny enough, having read the bonus questions and the level 5 question before I started, I knew that I was going to need to split out the first and second half down the line, and so I did that now already. You didn't have to do the first and second half split for this level. You just needed the total. But I split out the first and second half scores here, and the handy formula, the text before formula and text after formula, looking at that pipe symbol, just basically gave me the before and after the halftime mark scores. Then I split those out. Renier, I used the similar multiple delimiters on the text split that you did, but I just had a named range called delims.
Yeah, that was clever. I like that.
I don't even know where I saved my.
I think it's on the first page, top somewhere.
Yeah, I put
to the
them
right,
somewhere.
top somewhere. Yeah, I saw them. You just basically put them onto.
Where I put them.
You just basically put them somewhere, and then you named them. See, they're gone.
Yeah,
but they were there.
I think they linked on my other work.
Okay.
They were there.
But yeah,
anyway,
so you basically just type them out and you refer to that range, or you name that range, which is cool.
Yeah, correct. I basically put what did I do? A comma, a pipe, and a semicolon. And just named that delims. Something like that. The cool thing that works.
Yeah, the cool thing is that you can then you can pass multiple parameters into that text split function, and then the trim takes away any spaces, which is awesome as well. Which means you don't have to check for like comma space and things like that. You just sort of trim them away, and then you're just left with the proper values. And because you've only got the C's now, not the TCs, you're actually left with proper structured data per match.
Yep. And so then I basically went and just counted up how many TCPD there was for team 1 and team 2, and then I did that per half. You didn't have to do it per half here. And the way that I did that is just did a count if on the range that I'd split out, and then just concatenated the team number and the score character. And so essentially this is giving me count if, and then joining those two together, you know, 1T. So look for the any 1Ts there are, and that just means team 1 that scored a try. And so I just counted up the number of iterations that there were. So there were 2 team 1 conversions, which is there and there, etc. And then I pulled in the points that you got for each of those characters, and then just multiplied out the number of iterations of team 1 tries with 5 points. Team 1 try converted 2 times 7 gave me the 14 points. And then I just summed that up between the halves. Again, didn't have to do that now. And that gave me the total points for the game over here. 56, I think. Yeah, 56 was example there. And then I just pulled 56 into a data table, ran a sequence from 21 to 40, and put this into a data table, which basically iterates through all of the scenarios by changing this example here. So 21 you'll see becomes 13 over here, which is the 13 that I'm getting there. And then I just linked up level 3, all the answers down here.
Jason, do you want to quickly show how to run a data table for the people who don't know? Because that's a quite useful thing in these type of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So the key behind a data table is to feed in an output that you are trying to iterate through, you know, different scenarios. My output here was the sum of the points scored by both teams, and so 13 points. And then you want to provide a list of inputs that you want to change. And so my input fundamentally here is a scenario number, and this is quite a powerful use of data tables. So, you know, if you're in a finance background, data tables, you might think about like sensitizing a specific input, like a discount rate or an inflation rate or something like that, a cost price or something. But you can also use it to run scenarios just by changing a scenario number with this basic setup over here, which is quite powerful. So essentially, I'm just feeding 21, 22, 23 into the model. And then to run the data table, you select the table, the 2D range that covers the output and the inputs. Then you go to data, what if analysis, data table. I don't know if this pop-up shows if I'm only showing my window. Can you guys see the data table pop-up?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't show you.
I think. Anyway, there's a little window that pops up called data table, and it asks you for a row input or a column input. I always get confused. I think this one is the column input.
Yes, column.
Column input cell, and then you say which cell is the actual input cell, and that's this cell B2, which is where I was changing the scenario number. Run that and refresh, and that then basically just populates all of those outputs for me as if I had manually gone and changed the model to scenario 22, taken the output and hard-coded the value, changed to scenario 23, taken the output, hard-coded the value, 24. It just does that for you. That's essentially what it does. Yeah.
So what's interesting is, if I can steal the share quickly, if you don't mind, Jason. What's interesting is when I open up your example, our models looked so similar. I was actually amazed at how similar they looked, and this is untouched after I did it, after I set up the case. And I mean, I took it a little bit further, but I also did it a bit more simpler in a sense. So I just wanted to show. So I also did the same setup. So I also put this little input number there, and also I did index and X match. So I love index and X match. You could have done X lookup. X lookup is actually shorter. And then I also did an X lookup for a dynamic feedback to bring the two teams over or across. And then I did a text split with my characters again. But then I said, okay, well, I actually want to split up. I want to actually split them between first half, second half. So I used the pipe as a row delimiter and the other two as column delimiters. So it put sort of the first half in the first row and the second half in the second row. And then I took the take function. The first first, I said take the first one and then take the last one, indicating that with a -1, just to split them up between first half and second half so that I can refer to them as separate dynamic arrays. And then I did an if error. I didn't even need to do this, but I just looked up the points, but then realized, well, I didn't need to do that, so I just left that there. Then I said, okay, I want first half, second half for team 1, team 2, and I just did a sum. So this looks more complex than it is, but I essentially said, if the left is 1, in other words, team 1, then take the right of that character for the number of characters where of the length less 1. So that's to account for the TC, which is something you wouldn't have had to do because you replaced the TC with the C. But in essence, I just took the right of the remaining characters. Yeah, hope that makes sense at all. And then looked that back up to the actual the symbols versus the points, right? And I could have named these ranges as well if I wanted to, and that would have made this calculation look simpler, because this would have been just like symbols and this would have been scores or whatever. But then that made it easy for me to actually sum all the points together dynamically. That gave me first half, second half for both teams, and also the total for both teams. And essentially, initially I wanted to do something with points difference between first half and second half, but I decided against that ultimately. What I also did here was I looked at whether I just used an ifs formula to check if the one is more than the other. Then it's basically, so if 2 is more than 1, then basically 2 led. Otherwise, it was a draw if they were equal. Otherwise, if 1 was more than the other, it would have been. So a switch would have also worked, yeah, potentially. But anyways, so this is just for me to determine who led halfway, who won in the second half, or who got the most points in the second half, and who got the most points overall. So this was for bonus question 2, if I remember correctly. And then what I did was I just put all of my determinations into one big data table, and I ran it across all 100 scenarios with examples. So then I could refer back to just the one data table. I just had to build it once, and I had all my answers in one. So I basically had the total for both, which is just basically referring to these two cells. I had the points difference, which I didn't need. I had the number of drop goals, which I calculated there by just doing the sum of the D's in the right of the full range, which is that full range there. So I just sort of did the sum of the D's, a sum if, not a sum if, or an if over sum over if, whatever. But yeah, did the drop goals, and then basically did they win after trailing? This was for bonus question 3, I believe. Highest points in the second half, that was bonus question 3, I think. Drop goals was bonus question 1, that was bonus question 2, that was bonus question 3. So basically I could solve all of them at once. For bonus question 3, I just did a max on this. And on this, this was for level 4 to determine who won. Just basically brought this back, just use the lookup for that, brought this back, and then built the score dynamically like that. So that was essentially, I did it all in one data table. So this is basically one big data table across all of these values. So I saw that you broke them up into separate ones. With this, I could basically just do a copy paste of all of the sort of things there, remove the white spaces in between, put all my answers together in one data table. So that was how I did it essentially, and that gave me all the answers, which meant taking it back into my model. I just had to do VLOOKUPs back to my workings, and you could have done that for level 1 to 5. So you could have built one model, and I've seen guys like Andrew Nye that does that. He He builds one flippin' big model and he answers all 5 at once. Boom, it's done. Yeah, I don't know. Steyn, what does your sort of model look like?
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Yeah, so I also had where I did the example and then I did a VLOOKUP, splitting it per half time. And then I use a text split to split it into each section. And then here I identify which team it is. And then here I use that same mid function with the length -1 to get the last part of characters. And then I do a VLOOKUP or lookup to get the value of the points. And then basically here I can do a sum if what's the total per team for each of the halves. And then I can add that together. And then I also just ran the data table on it. And then I could use this model for level 3 or 4 and 5 also, since I have the data per half.
Yeah, perfect. So we essentially all did very similar things, which just talks to the fact that, I mean, we've done quite a couple of cases like this ourselves over the past couple of years. I think the first time I participated was 2021, end of the year. The first time I participated was in the FMWC Open, which is now called the Microsoft Excel World Championship, and I love that. I participate every year. I flip and love that competition. Where the financial modeling one for me is a bit too technical financial modeling, and because I don't necessarily always work in financial modeling, I feel like doing that like competitively is not. I'm not there yet. I want to be, but I'm not there yet. But for like basic problem solving, I'm calling this basic, but for problem solving, I love this competition. It's been so interesting, the things that they've come up with. I guess the other thing I just want to quickly share is that I also did for the bonus questions, because I ran all the scenarios with examples, because I wanted to test my examples. So that's why I included the examples. I wanted to test it against the examples. But with this, to exclude the examples, I actually did a sum if again. Not a sum if, but an if over sum, or a sum over if, whatever you call it. And then I said, if it is a number, if in that column it is a number, then bring back the value, the double dash of what I calculated in column F, and do the sum of all of that. So that's sort of how I brought back the drop goals, because the drop goals are essentially all counted in column F. And I'm just saying, if this is a number, or if that's a number, or if that's a number, bring it back. So then I know I'm just getting back the numbers without the examples, because that's also something that's just that the guys also just need to be aware of, is in the questions we tend to say over all 100 matches don't include examples. So that's just a little bit of a tip for exam technique. I actually made sure that it said excluding examples, and that this one said excluding examples. So yeah, I guess mostly that's the story. So the other thing that I also just wanted to touch on is the fact that if you wanted to, you could have done a lot of these manually, and guys that run out of time, or that are under pressure, if you have 5 minutes left and you know you're not getting full marks, you might as well try and use those last 5 minutes to do 1 or 2 of them manually. So what we said this afternoon is, I mean, if you look at the last level, right, the first 3 would have given you points. The last ones would have only given you points if you got the total right? So, but it's pretty easy to look at who would have won, who won the match. So it's either Japan or Fiji. So you have a 50% chance. So if you only have a couple of seconds, pick one and submit, right? Because why not? But with this, you could see like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So it's most probably 2 that won. You can actually see that 2 scored the most score events. So it's most probably Fiji. If you look at the second one, 2, 2, 2, and 2, they are very similar, but you can still calculate it relatively quickly in your head if you wanted to, right? It's easy enough to read the numbers and to see who probably would have won. On this one, I can see it's probably England because it's number 2, and that was the answer. So you could have gotten a lot of free marks if you were under pressure. This one takes a bit longer to do, but this score, for instance, is pretty easy. You could see it's two got a penalty, 1 got a penalty, and 1 got a try. So it's 3 plus 5 versus 3. So it's 8 versus 3. So yeah, it's something that I see a lot of people didn't do. And I know that under pressure, you don't necessarily think about things like that, but you could have gotten full marks for question 1 in like a minute, because that is as simple as bringing back 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. So the only one where the only 2 of them that it wasn't the first team that won was with these 2. So in other words, you could have just copied those values across and you had your winners. So very simple, very quickly, and very quick and very easy. But the idea behind these models, or the idea behind these questions, are that they actually build in order to guide you, so that you sort of get familiar with the information while scoring easy points initially. And that's the reason why we have these levels going like that. So, yeah, any other thoughts, Jason, from your side?
The only thing I'll mention is for bonus 1. I went and did bonus 1 immediately without building a model, and essentially I just pulled all of the levels, essentially all of the questions into one tab. I called it a bonus tab. I did that mid with a sequence thing to just split out all the characters and just counted the Ds, and that I think took like a minute to do.
Yeah.
And so, I think when you're competing on sort of offline, not on like a live stream, the speed with which you get the bonus point doesn't matter. But if you see the live streams, the speed with which you get the bonus point makes a difference, as you said earlier. So,
yeah,
in a live stream situation, I think to get the bonus points immediately would have been helpful, because otherwise you run the risk of somebody else getting the points before you. But yeah. I probably got, in the greater scheme of things, because the time didn't matter, I probably cost myself a minute of model building just to go and score bonus 1, which I could have done as part of the big solution. But I'm just, it's interesting to play up the strategies when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
Do you go for bonuses first? Don't you go for bonuses first? And in this case specifically, I don't think you could do bonus 2 and bonus 3 without really sort of solving the case properly.
No,
yeah.
You couldn't have, unless you're Bo or Diarmid. But yeah, basically, let's see, but basically using Steyn's methodology, you could have just done this as well. You could have done the length of that with the length of the substitute, where you substitute D with nothing, and you just sum up this column and you've got 78. So your question 1, I think Steyn's methodology is actually the easiest, looking at it, because it's actually quick and easy to do. This question you could have only done if you actually split it up properly, like we did, where you actually have your first half and your second half like this. And well, in some format where you can actually work with it and with a data table. Otherwise, if you didn't have a data table, I don't think you'll be able to actually get to this number. And then this one is also, it's much simpler with the data table after you've actually split them up between second half and first half. But yeah, I hope the guys enjoyed the first round, and you will definitely enjoy the second round as well. The second round will be more challenging. That's a case that Steyn developed. And it's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, so yeah, I think in the end, the big thing here is there's nothing to lose, but everything to gain, right? So you learn so much from this. One of my mates that also participated spoke to me a bit earlier, and he said, "Dude, I learned new things. I didn't do well, but I learned 2 new things that I can use in my day-to-day. So already worth my while. So yeah, I guess just the amount of work that goes into these cases to make them interesting and to actually make them fun is already, I think, worth $100. And what's also nice about this competition is we share all the cases with you as well, so you can use it going forward to practice certain things and yeah, to also hopefully help us sell the idea to others out there as well. So yeah, I guess, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for you guys for assisting with the cases as well. Neither of us or none of us are making any money out of this. It's just for the love and the fun of it. Steyn, any closing thoughts from your side?
Thank you very much, and I hope you at least learned something by competing.
Yeah, that's all you want in the end, right? Okay, thanks, gentlemen, for taking the time out, and thanks for the late night. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week after we've done case number 2, qualifying round number 2. It should be a doozy. Have a nice evening, guys.
Thanks, Renier.
Thanks.